Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Community America Credit Union. I'm Joel Goldberg. Hope everything is going well as we're recording this. Still in the heart of summer for me in Kansas City. I bring that up because my guest today said, how's your weather down there in Kansas City? Because it's nice and mild during the summer up here in Calgary, which sounds great for anyone in Kansas City or this part of the country in the United States. A trip up to Calgary or somewhere up north this time of year sounds really, really nice. I'm not so sure about during the winter. I've done a hockey game in Edmonton and in Calgary in the winter, and I can attest to the fact that it brings me back to my days of broadcasting in northern Wisconsin, close to the upper peninsula of Michigan, where you could go weeks without the temperature getting above zero. That's Fahrenheit, by the way, not Celsius. All right, so that is a long roundabout way of me getting to my guest, Leona deVinne. She's a certified coach and facilitator at deVille Partners, a coach, a joy guru. I want to talk about that because I love positivity. Her website is leonadevinne.com. Also a sock broker at joysocks.ca. In her professional life as a leadership coach and consultant, she provides leaders across the globe with the research-backed tools to lead with exquisite expertise that results in cohesive terms and thriving organizations. In her recently published book, Finding Your Joy Spot, she provides practical frameworks that are science-based to help readers discover joy in unexpected places through gritty personal stories and ample doses of humor. Leona gently guides readers to experience more joy every day with self-reflection questions and hands-on tools. And I had a chance to meet Leona virtually, like I do most people nowadays, through a really good friend of mine, Chandra Clark, who was in Boston, used to live in Kansas City. Leona's mission is to help people find more joy by bringing their gifts and talents to the world. That is another long way of me introducing my guest, Leona deVinne. That's the bio on it, but one, Leona, welcome to the podcast in your nice, cool settings of Calgary, Alberta. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for having me today, Joel. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's good to have you. I've been excited about this because when Chandra introduced us, you and I had a great Zoom call, one where I pulled over and did it from my car because I was in the middle of going from point A to point B, which is usually the case for me. But I was so interested in what we discussed. I mean, there are a lot of coaches out there. There's millions of them, but I was going to say they're all great. They're not all great. It depends on who you are and what you need and all that type of stuff. But I think that what makes you unique is your use of science and the way that you delve into this. And I'm not for lack of a better term, science-y type of guy. My grades way back when would have showed that, but I'm fascinated by the way that you're connecting all of this. And then when you're talking about a topic like joy, I mean, who doesn't need more of that? So let's start with that and your passion for coaching, science, joy, and how this all ties together.
I couldn't agree more. I think we are all desperate for more joy, whether you call it joy, happiness, contentment. Joy is easy to spell, so I picked that. And what I noticed in my professional career was as I was coaching leaders, whether they were coaching a team or, an entrepreneur, was the closer they got to what really mattered to them, they would have this, spark of joy or this joy spot. And over the years, I started to study then what it was that was actually happening, even from a neurobiological standpoint, which might sound kind of crunchy and boring. But if we can find ways that we can understand what sparks that positive experience for us, then number one, we can reinforce it and we can start to follow those different places. And I would define kind of a joy spot as professionally kind of that combination of what we're good at, what lights us up, and where there's, a gap, what the world needs, or where we see a need. And when we're in that place, you heard people call it the sweet spot, whatever that is, that's where we can really start to make a difference. But in all things in life, sometimes what we're good at still gets a little gritty. And so how can we continue to reinforce those places where we experience joy or happiness, and continue to move in that direction. That's when we get innovation, engagement, productivity, all those good things that we're longing for more of.
I'm interested too in the messaging on this because, you have the psychology background. I think you had said to me, and I really liked this line, if that's what I would call it, that you work with scientists, but it's not rocket science. And so I like that one because I heard that in what you were just saying right now, that twice you said, look, I don't want to get too deep into this or too gritty, because there's so much research backed in this, right? And that's your life's work, is digging deep into the psychology and the science. But yet a lot of people that may be receiving this message, even if they are scientists or not, may not want to hear all of those details, right? So you have to be able to show that research and then kind of help them look, sift through the weeds, so to speak. How important is that messaging?
Well, it's really important. And I think I try to use some humor, story. Humor, number one, makes things accessible. And having some fun is a big value of mine. I just think, again, if you're not having some sort of fun, you might be moving in the wrong direction. And not that, again, fun. Thinking of a baseball analogy, hitting home run is super fun. It took a lot of work to get there. So that can be approachable. And if I'm talking about joy and it's like some gritty textbook, who cares? There is no joy in that. Stories is how our brain actually receives, you're a storyteller, Joel. That's why people like you, they want to listen to you, because our brains love story. It helps us to put things together really well. And with lack of data, we automatically make stories. So we might as well tell a good one. And the science just reinforces that this is true. Sometimes people write a book and they're like, hey, this is a really great idea that you eat broccoli and lick ice cubes to lose weight. And you're like, well, that's nice that worked for you. But, where do we have some sort of truth or foundation to that shows that it wouldn't just work for you? So that's why it was important to use all of those components. So there's science to it. And I'm also all about that's if something is science-based and it does work for people, then let's try it out. So there is a little bit of research, and there's also some journaling prompts in the book, at least. I call it like coaching in a can. Coaching, unlike sports coaching, leadership coaching is a lot of asking questions, helping people understand each other or themselves and become more aware. And so asking some questions so that people can have that own awareness, kind of like we talked about before getting on here live. It's really important to know who we are and what matters to us, how we work most effectively. Otherwise, we're kind of flopping around trying to align ourselves with other people, and that doesn't always work.
I like on the website, and I'd encourage everybody to check it out, leonadevinne.com. And as far as the spelling, it's all on the show notes and all of that. But deVinne is DEVINNE, leonadevinne.com. And there's everything about what Leona does in terms of the new book. It says, if you're feeling dull, like life is dull, boring, and hard, like every day is Groundhog Day. A lot of us go through that. And your routine seems to be on rinse and repeat every single day. Those three words were in all caps. Or worse, you've been going through hell and you're carrying more than you feel like you can endure. You'd give anything for a bit more pep in your step, or you won't know joy if it kissed you square in the mouth. This book is for you. So great writing, great promotion. But I think, Leona, that's everyone in some form or another.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that those statements are something that would go over anyone's head right now. Now, for some people, they're living that every single day. Others might get into those ruts too, but especially now with the pandemic, how many people that have been sitting at home or going through the same thing? And what if you're at home taking care of kids and school and on and on and on?
Yeah.
I mean, how much have you heard from people during these times and related to the book?
so much. And the funny thing is, somebody was like, what perfect timing? I was like, there wasn't perfect timing. I wrote a book over a number of years. This is how long it took to be published. I had no idea that the pandemic was going to come along, but I think people are desperate for it. And prior to the pandemic, people were desperate for it. And I think one of my, the things that was most shocking as I was writing the book, working through some things myself. We have a very serious chronic condition in my family, and how I noticed that joy can be there actually more vibrantly in hard times sometimes than in just Groundhog Day is already challenging, but sometimes we think, oh, well, I need to earn a certain income. I need to partner with the right person. I need to be at that dream job for us to experience that positivity and contentment that we're all craving. And I would say that there is a very big basic baseline for income, because if you're worried about being wherever your food's going to come from at dinner, it's harder to feel joy. Although I've traveled in third world countries and shared what appeared to be their last meal with people, and I would say they know more about joy than any of us
No
do.
question.
But yeah, they are remarkable. But from a science standpoint, there's a certain baseline for income, but otherwise, outside of that, people don't have to be pain-free. People don't have to have their dream job. There's, 5 key components, according to the science of flourishing. And that's what the book is based on. It's been studied for 40 years, and which really shows us if we focus on these 5 things, we are going to feel better, and our health will improve. And we start to, again, build these new neural pathways that we start to look for joy and find it more easily. And so that's the focus. It's kind of like an exercise program. We're building joy muscles. And don't they look good?
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. I'm going to be the guy that says, hey, let's not get too gritty here. I'm hearing, I believe everything, of course, that you're saying, but
thank you, Joel.
I think about positivity. Now I'm a glass half full type of guy.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I don't get in my ruts, but I'm a firm believer in, finding the bright spot in everything. So that's so basic.
Yeah.
When we get gritty now, you start talking about, what did you say? Neural pathways?
Yeah. They're
And
like
I'm
muscles
thinking,
in your brain that work better when we use them more often. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, how do you do that? Because that's over my head. Although I will say, again, I'm going to be the guy that dumbs this down, which is okay. And I think that you know how to do that. It's the wrong way to say it, but you know what I'm saying. You probably aren't going to say to a client, let me dumb this down for you. But you need to
for
speak
some clients, I would never use neural pathways or dopamine. I would just say, this is a good thing that you could reinforce, and you would notice that you started to feel more positive. I'm like, because part of what I do is really try to align my message. Perhaps not specifically for you today, Joel, with this neural pathway stuff, but
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it a little bit. Look, I'm one of those guys that when I start hearing science terms, I flash back to the worst grades that I was getting in high school, because that was the one, that was the one class and subject that I struggle with. But yet I'm reminded every day of the power of all of this. And, as I've been recently trying to explore and delve a little bit deeper into some meditation and Reiki energy healing and all these type of things, as someone like many others that I'm all over the place. I mean, I can't sit still. I'm doing 50,000 things at once. And there's such a benefit to slowing things down. Yeah. So, when you talk about those neural pathways, I believe all of that. And in some ways I can almost feel that muscle memory. It's almost like when you make it a habit of journaling every day, or reading, or doing a crossword or a Sudoku or whatever it is, it feels like there is some type of benefit to it, beyond just, hey, let me see if I can complete this puzzle. So that's me dumbing it down a little bit. But how difficult is it to dig into there?
Well, research is there, and I love the dumbing down, because part of that's why I made the book sound a little tongue in cheek, because I'm like, this is not, as I joke, I'm working with a a global team of rocket scientists. I make no rocket science jokes, which is actually a miracle.
You can't, can
So
you?
there's some really good science. But
I was going to say, would they handle the joke,
I
or
don't
no?
know. I'm a little intimidated by them. They want to know about all the neural pathways because they're like, don't give
Yes.
us anything that's this woo-woo stuff. We just want to know, how do we become more, emotionally intelligent so we can engage our team and we can get some stuff done. I'm like, I'm going to tell you how, and this is the science behind it, because otherwise they just think it's, lipstick girl who's just feeding them a bunch of fluff. So, yeah, but I think there's lots of research that backs this, but I really try to focus just more on how can, if this is important to you, right? Like you said, Joel, you have 50,000 things going on at one time. I think you might have closer to 100. Bless you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's a few things that we might feel drawn to? You said journaling or meditation or mindfulness. If you're drawn to that, give it a try. To me, it's just like exercising. If you like going for a mid-morning walk or a sprint or doing a HIIT workout, then go for it. Like, follow what it is that you're, maybe if you don't know, if you're not feeling very happy, just follow what you're curious about. That's a great way to just get started in something, right? I'm curious about mindfulness. And so that's the whole premise as well, is don't take on, 100 different things that's going to, bolster positivity, or just one thing. Like, do you want to think about when you're eating, how good the food tastes? That's very good for you. Whether or not you care it's releasing dopamine or whatever it's doing, who cares? I just really live by the premise that life is precious.
Mm-hmm.
Squeeze all the juice out of it. And however you decide to do that, you do it. I can tell you what's happening internally to you, but it really doesn't matter. Does it make you feel better? Great. If it makes you feel crappy, maybe don't do that, unless it is learning how to run. That always makes you feel crappy, believe me.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a reminder too. I mean, you're dealing in that search for joy, happiness, positivity,
Yeah.
and being someone that is dealing with the science of this. You understand, I get this part, that the brain is complicated and that we all are wired a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Right. And so the messaging and what you're dealing with, who you're dealing with, is going to be different every single time. Even all those rocket scientists aren't going to be exactly the same, although you could probably put them into a different category than, say, someone like me. Right. But to label all of them as exactly the same is going to do them and you a disservice. And so how much of what you're doing, I mean, I know everything of what you're doing is science-based, but how much do you also have to tap into that personal side, and as you're marrying all those together to see those differences?
I think the personal side is probably more important than the science side to me. Is that, are we connecting people with new possibilities for how they feel more content, more engaged, more lit up about their life? And I mean, again, I know the science around how that creates, more opportunities for engagement, more positive work cultures, they stand out in the market. And so I really try to connect my clients to what matters to them. Are you trying to stand out in the market? And I mean, obviously you can't run a very viable business without doing that. But it's, really understanding, like, what are their needs? So if somebody keeps going, well, why? This sounds, a little, maybe just even BS. I don't care. Okay, great. We can talk about that. A lot of my clients, they would not know that I have a neuroscience background. They could care less. It's really about, when I'm facilitating or I'm coaching somebody, how do I get this to land for them? So a lot of what I focus on is, how do they learn? How do they intake information? What's really important to them, right? And sometimes none of this even, plays a role. If somebody wants to be more effective, then we can talk a little bit about what's holding them back, but then let's get some tools going. Then again, the dorky side of me is like, I know why this tool works. I know what's happening in your brain. I mean, I'm not that smart, but I don't mention it. I'm just like, yay, we've got some really great tools here, and you're going to be, incredibly effective. And then what does that spark? Joy. But sometimes that word never comes up, and sometimes nobody cares about what's going on inside. It just sparks joy for me because I'm like, this is amazing. This has got all your
Well,
cylinders firing. Yeah.
you love that stuff though, right? So
I love
like
it.
they don't even have to understand and get the
No,
science of it.
no,
Some do, some don't.
no.
But that's that you find your joy,
Yeah.
I know, in helping
Yeah.
others, but also in the sun, right? It might just be in your head, oh my gosh, and you're connecting those
Yes.
dots, and
Yeah.
that's your joy spot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my thing. And I mean, I guess it would be like anybody, right? You would know things behind the scenes in sports that I would have
Sure.
no clue. I'm just glad that my team won, right?
Mhm.
Or they, got the top draft pick or something like that. I'm like, I just know the basics. You know all the intricacies. I literally would be like, I can't imagine what kind of information your brain holds. And so you just might smile at me as you explain like two things, and you got filing cabinets of data on that. And so we all just kind of have our thing, but we respect where people are at, what's important for them. And that's a big deal with what I do when I'm facilitating, developed all kinds of leadership programs, coaching programs. It's how am I meeting their needs and making sure that it's all about them and not about me.
Which applies to everything in life. It really does. I mean, it's one of the secrets to me is how often is it about someone else and not about
Yeah.
you. Two questions before I get to the
Yeah.
baseball theme questions. So the first is your career path, your journey, your trajectory. Is this where you thought you wanted to be, or as you were growing up, what were the aspirations?
Oh, growing up, I probably wanted to be like a fire truck or something. I wasn't a very deep philosophical child. I know I've always loved to connect with people. And my dad said, since I've been able to talk, I was annoying with the question, why? And I have not stopped asking that question. So why does that work? So truth is a big deal to me. And I guess helping my clients find the truth out about, what builds their culture, their team, what lights them up, what's important, how do we, create a strategy around. So connecting people to possibilities, and not just general possibilities, but, kind of sounds a little woo woo, but, why are they here and how they can fulfill that regardless of what they do is really important. So no, I didn't know I would be doing this. But yeah, I did pursue education in psychology. Bless all the psychologists, but it was really boring. They're like, how does your eye communicate with the back of your brain? I'm like, nobody cares. Like, I don't care where that goes. Does that make me feel good? No. And yeah, so I didn't think I would be here. I have been a serial entrepreneur. I own 3 companies. And so this is just sort of supporting people in their leadership skills. So it's just kind of come together. But it's been a little bit more like a pinball game than it has been
It's fun.
climbing a ladder.
Yeah. Well, isn't life like that anyway,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's never one straight climb or one straight direction. The second question I had then was you told me on the phone. I know this is true. I think it's coming out in the interview as well. So I know that you say it, and I'll say it in the most
Yeah.
loving way. But I believe you referred to yourself as a research nerd, which I've never met a research nerd, I don't think, that's offended by that description. It's almost like a badge of honor. You're Brene Brown certified,
Yeah.
and anyone that follows Brene Brown knows that she is the ultimate research nerd.
Yeah.
Tell me about that description. Is it a badge of honor?
I don't have the PhD or anything like that to back it up, but I'm more the like I just listen. I'm like that kid on Jerry Maguire. Did you know that the human brain weighs 10 pounds? I am annoying to be around. My poor partner is like, I was like, did you know if you get morning light in your eyes, it sets your circadian rhythm for the whole day and you'll sleep better? Okay, we're going for a walk. And he's just like, so, yes, I am a complete research nerd. Whatever it is, I'm like trying to get to the behind things. And so I really temper what I'm learning because I'm like, Leona, probably no one cares. So thank goodness I was blessed with a little bit of emotional intelligence to not go like hog wild on everyone that I meet. But I am 100% a research nerd. I wish I was like a music person, but I am like a podcast fiend. If you know something and I find it interesting, even, that matters to me. So research nerd, I am in.
I like it. And truthfully, and you're onto something with this too, having the ability, the EQ, I guess that's what we would say, right? To know when and when not.
Yeah.
That, by the way, is that a taught skill, or is that an either you have it or you don't? I'm just curious.
EQ. EQ, either you have it, Joel, you have super high EQ, because the things that are already scientifically backed, you just do it, right? You're like, oh, I got a million things in my brain, so I'm going to try some mindfulness practices, right? You're not going, mindfulness practices, according to this researcher says, do it. You just do it, right? You can read a room, you have great interview skills. Some of those can be learned, but you are like, so a lot of people EQ is natural, but otherwise it can be 100% taught. It's just hard. It's like being a natural, you're a fast runner. I can never be taught to be a fast runner, but I can certainly try. I can build on that skill, but I may not have the anatomy or the, whatever to really, make me the top. But it's a both end.
I don't know that I always knew that I had the EQ, but I think the further I went in my career, the more I paid attention and learning along the way, of course, like we all do, but it almost became like a superpower to me. I mean, I'm self-diagnosing here only because I think it's interesting that, and I wrote a whole chapter in my book about reading the room. And when I have players come up to me and say, hey, we trust you, or we appreciate the way you went about this, or yes, I'll make time for you, I fully understand. They may not know it exactly why, but I understand that that's a product of EQ in a world where they are getting pulled in a million directions.
Absolutely. And you're also very correct, research-based or not, EQ is the highest indicator of success. So when we look at leadership, business development, creating a thriving culture, creating an organization that stands out, leaders that have high EQ are far more successful than leaders that have just high IQ. So I do focus a lot of my work. I do a lot of EQ training in organizations for that reason. Because could know, well, I know how to make money on a spreadsheet, but if you can't, drive a team, create an engaged and healthy culture, good luck.
Oh, I love that. That's so interesting. Okay, my baseball themed questions, which I believe you told me you're not a baseball gal, right?
Not by any fault of my own. We have one baseball team, and
got the Blue Jays.
Exactly. And that's like 4,800 kilometers. And I don't know what that is in miles, about 3,000 miles away from me. So that feels far, but I do hockey, and I was a season ticket football holder, although
the Stampede, I think, right?
That's Stampede. Right. Just Canada football. So that doesn't really even count either. So you can just delete that off this recording. But I am all about the analogies, because
they work.
I won't tell you what happens in a brain when you use analogies, but they're very good for you.
Okay, good, because I use a lot of them, and God knows my brain could use all the help it could get. Okay, let's go to the baseball themed questions. You don't need to know anything about baseball or anything about the Blue Jays, or you can. It doesn't make a difference. Career-wise for you, what's been the biggest home run?
Biggest home run has been starting 3 successful companies. One now passive income, that's 20 years old. I have a coaching and facilitation, leadership and business development company that's been successfully running for the last 11 years. And I run a nonprofit called Joy Socks, where we give away goofy gift wrap socks to people in charities, shelters, and hospitals, and where I lead a group of volunteers, and we hand out socks to people to spark joy. That's
pretty fun, though. I'm a sock guy too, so.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. I totally do that. It's a weird thing, because it's like I'm not saying it's a trademark or anything like that, but I take a lot of pride in my sock choice, and nobody sees them because they don't. The camera's like waist up.
You got to start doing some like kicks up to the head. So.
Remember what you said about not being a good runner? I'm not that,
That's
nor am
right.
I flexible or anything like
Yeah.
that. So
Okay, good to know.
we
We
need a
all
new
know.
we
We
need a
all
new
know our
invention.
limits.
We know our limits. We need a new invention there. Okay, how about a swing and a miss? And what did you learn from it?
Swing and a miss. So cold calling to build business. Oh my
Mm.
goodness. I think they could literally hear my heart start to crinkle on the calls. They're just like, who are you? Are you okay? I'm like trying to build my business. Yeah, never again. Never again. I don't even do warm calls. I might do a warm email, but I will never cold call again. I think you lower your lifespan by doing that. But some people, that's their joy.
Right.
I'm like, you bring it. For Leona, it's not good.
And I'm the same exact way. The cold calling thing makes me cringe. It's actually how I got into television. And I tell that story. I wrote about it a little bit in my book too, is I was so desperate because I thought that my dream was evaporating because I was getting rejected everywhere that I applied, that I eventually just sucked it up and got out of my comfort zone. And so actually the cold calling ended up being a home run. But if I never have to cold call again, I'll never do it. I mean, it's, but it's what got me to where I was.
Yeah.
So there's a different lesson there probably in terms of
Yeah.
getting out of your comfort zone
Yeah.
when
100%.
you have to.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I think you and I are wired the same way. I don't know about in terms of neuroscience,
Yeah.
but no, we are. I
We could
think that
make
there are
this
a lot of
podcast
similarities.
very long. Yeah.
We can make it very long, which I've been known to
Yeah.
do every now and then. Okay, how about the third question, small ball? You told me when we talked the first time and that when we met virtually, you're not a baseball person, but you're a small ball person, which is definitely my language. The little things that add up to the big wins, the success in
Yes.
life, business, whatever it is. What's small ball to you?
Yes. I tell all my clients, start with what you've got. So whether you're trying to launch a business, okay, you've got a great idea. Awesome. So what's the next step? So start with what you've got and take those next steps forward and follow your joy spots. And I don't mean that, maybe for some people, writing up website copy because they can't, afford to hire somebody is not painful, but continue to follow those things where your truth lies, your skill lies, and keep going forward. But you don't need a huge plan. Just start with what you've got. I thought before our call, I thought you don't got a baseball bat, start with sprints, start with running, start with accuracy, start with a ping pong, ball, and that is not a ball. Well, it is a ball, but different kind of ball. Start with what you have and just keep going one step. That's what I tell clients, whether it's, I want to make a difference on our team. Start noticing and saying thank you for things. Connect with people and ask how sincerely, in a sincere fashion, how they are, not just in our North American, hey, how are you? Those small things add up to big moments. So I'm all about, those small ball moments. Just keep going.
I love it. One of the analogies I like to use too, because my son played hockey for the last 13 years and not anywhere near as big of a sport in Kansas City as it would be in Calgary or anywhere in Canada or anywhere up north in the States. And so most of the kids that he knows don't even know how to skate. And what I would always tell anybody who wanted to get their kid into hockey is don't touch the puck, don't touch the stick. You have to figure out the skating first. And what I always say is, would you teach your kid to play basketball without first knowing how to walk or run? And so that's one of those little steps. That's why I love the sports analogies, is that you have to learn to do, the basics first before you progress. I think a lot of us forget that in business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just one thing. And, for all my clients, there's something you can do today that's going to make a difference for tomorrow. So it might start small, but anything that is turned out to be, some, huge thing like computers, what we're dealing with right now, started with a very small idea, and they just had the courage to take that one step. So just take that one step and keep going.
All right, let's get to my 4 final questions as we round the bases. The first one will be a little something that I learned about you that you shared, and I don't know the story, so I can't wait to hear it. Something about drinking toilet water?
Oh, did I say that? That's
Yeah, you
awesome.
might
That
have.
is a very true story. Not science-based, although I did hear something about it. I was, somebody bet me that I wouldn't drink a glass of toilet water. And my dad was a plumber, and I don't always do the details. So he said, hey, if any crisis ever happens, you can drink out of the tank, not the bowl. I'm just like, whatever, tank, bowl. So I drank the glass out of the toilet bowl. Told my dad, he's like, Leona, it's the tank, not the bowl. I was like, so that's where accuracy was upped for me as a researching nerd. Like, always remember the right words. So I am still here today and rarely get colds. So I think that my immune system benefited, but I have no research-backed foundation to that. I
Okay,
do not
so
recommend it.
there's a lesson there, and
Yeah,
I mean, I sometimes my dogs drink out of the anyway.
exactly.
Okay, well, I don't think that'll ever happen again, but at least you have the story to
I
tell
do have
about
a
it.
story.
Second question I want to ask you about, and I thought about this as we were going early in the podcast. You talked about the joy in third world countries, and it struck a memory for me because, and I'll tell this one real quickly, that when way back when my brother served in the Peace Corps out of college, and I went to visit him, third world country in Africa, Western Africa, Togo, next to in between Benin and Ghana. And the short of the story is that as we were getting ready to leave his village after about a week there, there was a local family that made some kind of local brew concoction, uh, like a cider type of drink, very potent and strong. And I had been told no matter what I did over there, don't eat and drink the local stuff because you'll get sick, and the water and all that. And so I passed. He said, they're going to have a little going away party for you. I said, yeah, I'm not going to have this. He goes, you have to. You don't understand. They sell this. It's their living. They barely make any money, and they reserved some of their profit to share with you because they want to celebrate you being here. It always stuck with me. And then, of course, I got extremely drunk off of it and then extremely sick. But it was like, whatever. I mean, I survived. But that was that third world joy. A long way again of me asking you best experience or favorite country that you visited or worked in.
Oh, well, I haven't had the privilege of visiting. I've not yet been to Africa. I was supposed to go and work in an orphanage, and then COVID. But I was in the Philippines in 1989. There's something about just kind of having just what you need, right? They have enough for that meal. Like, we talk about one step. And, wow, they did not have a lot, but they were so joyful.
It's humbling,
And
isn't it?
pardon?
It's very humbling.
It's so humbling. And if you don't, right? Because I was like, okay, that you don't have bread for breakfast, right? Like, I'm not going to eat your bread. But that would have, I was told already, like, that's offensive. So, like, break bread
Right.
with them. That matters to them. But, like, I still get choked up thinking about them and what they know. They just whatever they have, they share. They're generous. They're very thankful for everything that they have, and they're not so worried, which is alarming. I'm 51, talking to my partner about retirement, and I'm like, is this going to happen? Like, it's a long way off because I don't actually ever plan to retire.
Yeah.
But I think they live in the moment. They, are very generous, and they're thankful for what they have. And again, I'm not going to get into the science, but those are three really important pieces. If we want to be happy, follow that.
It's great advice. I love it. And it's life-changing to be around people like that just because of what it does to your perspective.
Absolutely.
Third question as we round the bases, we touched on this before. What's the best way to connect with a rocket scientist?
Try to be a little more serious than I normally am. No, science to science. They are the why people. Do not give us woo woo. It's not woo woo, but to somebody else, I can say, hey, it's really important that we start with something positive before we provide feedback. I would add to a rocket scientist because it primes their brain, gives them a dopamine hit, which is a chemical that makes their brain more available for learning. And they'll take your feedback and they'll go get all that stuff done. And they're like, dopamine. We need that. I got to be nice to him first. Let's go. Yes. Authentically nice, because brains can also pick up on that. But yeah. So yeah, I meet science with science.
Well, and the reason why I ask, one, of course I always like a good laugh, but two, a lot of us in whatever businesses we in are going to deal with the why people sometimes. I say deal with, we're going to interact with the why people. And again, a reminder that you have to be able to read the room. You have to have that EQ to be able to understand that connecting with people can vary from person to person to person.
Yeah. And sometimes I get told they're really trying to improve, their market share. They're really trying to drive revenue. Then I'll say things like the same thing, but I'll say, then you connect naturally with them. They're open to your feedback. So they're going to, go engage in that and go make you money. So try it, or increase revenue, I would say. But yeah, meet people.
Last question is the walk-off. And again, to find out more about Leona and the book, leonadevinne.com, LeonaDeVinne, leonadevinne.com. The book is Finding Your Joy Spot, helping you discover joy in unexpected places. So as we finish and promote that, I will ask you briefly to talk about the 5 G's. It's on your website, the 5 G's of joy.
Awesome. Home run. These are based on the science of flourishing or happiness and joy. And so the first one is it's called PERMA. So we want to experience positive emotions. So anything we can do to reinforce those positive emotions is going to be really important. The second part is engagement. So any activity where we kind of feel like we're in the flow, forget what we're doing, or what time it is, or for some people that's hobbies, for some people that is their work, for some people that's volunteering, wherever that is, it's really good for you. We're all built with a sort of a set point for happiness and contentment, and this is how we bolster it. The next one being relationships. We want positive relationships. You do not have to be a scientist to go, oh, I feel a lot better when I'm not in poor relationships. The next one is meaning, what matters to us. That's a lot about like values, those kinds of like deeper pieces. A lot of that has to do with altruism, talking about the happy Filipinos. They are generous. And so people who are generous with their time and resources often really adds to meaning without having to know a stitch about your values or what makes you feel purposeful. And then the last one is accomplishment. We are built to accomplish things. So setting goals, and the goals does not have to be, a 5-year plan, a 80-page business plan to accomplish, but just setting a goal, achieving it, completing something. So, I even have some clients that are, blind from medical conditions, struggling at times, but just even a small goal automatically bolsters that joy for us. So setting those goals, if a really huge goal, like you and I becoming a sprinting team, Joel, seems really awesome, great. If that's your joy spot, bring it. If you like a stretch, awesome. But even sometimes it's even just writing a list and checking something off. Your brain loves that. So anything that you can set to accomplish and do, super, super good for your well-being and your joy.
It feels good to cross something off that list.
It does.
No doubt about it. And now we all handle lists in different ways. My wife always crosses everything off of her list. My list sometimes is found 3 years later underneath the ottoman in the family room. So
there we you still that sense of accomplishment. I found it. It's a joy spot. Yay.
And it felt good to write it down at least. So there was that part of it. But again, that reminder that we're all wired differently, but what we have in common among many things is we all want joy. We all want that happiness. And so it's a matter of trying to figure out how to get there. You can learn more about Leona, her coaching services, and the book as well, Finding Your Joy Spot, helping you discover joy in unexpected places, at leonadevinne.com. This is so much fun. It was not too nerdy or whatever, however you were describing it. I thought it was perfect, and I think it'll resonate with everyone. So it's been great to get to know you, and I appreciate you spending time, Leona, on Rounding the Bases.
So grateful for this time together, Joel.